Hey there, fishermen and lure scavengers. Have you ever come across a lure someone else lost? You pick it up thinking you've scored a free lure, but upon seeing it, you notice it's a type of lure with the hook built in, and notice that that hook is so badly corroded that it can't be used. Disappointed, you end up discarding it, thinking it's no longer of any use as a fishing lure? Well, not so fast. Today I'm going to show you my method for restoring the functionality of lures that have hooks integral with the body, despite having a badly corroded hook. How is this done? Well, I'm going to show you how I do it. First, let's cover a few things that you'll need. A pair of safety glasses, a pair of heat-resistant gloves, a pair of side cutters, a pair of medium-sized needle nose pliers, a pair of small-sized needle nose pliers, a pair of locking pliers, a pair of round nose pliers. You can get these at most craft stores. A torch, fuel for the torch, I simply use propane, a striker, a container of water, a set of magnifiers or a magnifying glass, and a putty knife or something to shield the lure from heat with. Lastly, you will need new hooks to install. I use open-eye Siwash hooks. There are several brands that offer these. I happen to have Gamakatsu brand. The most common sizes that I use for larger spinnerbaits are 2/0 and 3/0. I also use 1/0, 1 and size 2. First step in the process is you'll need to very closely examine the existing hook shank and look for corrosion. Any and all bits of corrosion on the hook. This means cutting off any portion of the hook that is corroded. Often the lures that I find still have plenty of good hook shank usable left if it is exposed, but sometimes finding non-corroded hook material or metal means that you'll actually have to cut off a portion of the soft plastics retainer and or the skirt collar area of the body. In order to expose fresh material that's underneath this lead, you'll need to determine how much you'll need to cut off. What you'll do is carefully snip with the side cutters, making sure not to damage the metal of the hook shank beneath this lead. Then give it a good twist or two and it usually pulls right off. Once you've done this, you'll need to determine the length of the hook material you'll need left in order to form your loop. Keep in mind that forming a loop may take more material than you'd think. Generally, for my purposes, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 millimeters of usable length between where I cut the hook off and the body of the lure is what I use. Keep in mind too that you'll also need to leave the loop open enough in order for you to get the hook on. Obviously, the wire diameter of the hook you are installing needs to be able to fit inside the loop you're bending. This next step is the most difficult and it's also the most critical. This will involve heating the hook shank up and bending in small increments in order to form your loop. This will take time and you need to be patient with these steps. What you'll be doing is heating the end of the hook shank up and bending that over in small increments. So you'll start with heating the end of the wire after you've held the shank of the wire with your clamping pliers or needle nose pliers. Bend just a little bit. The wire will cool visibly, of course. Then examine your bend or two that you put initially and make sure the bend is going the right way. You will need to orient the opening of your loop in the correct direction. Generally speaking, this means the loop will be parallel with the wire on spinnerbaits and buzzbaits. Be patient here, this will take time, and it's critical that you go slow. Usually I heat once or twice, then let the lure cool for 30 seconds to a minute in between heatings, just to make sure I'm not going to overheat the lure. If you overheat it too much, you'll end up melting the body of the lure and pretty much make it useless at that point. Simply keep heating and heating and bending, taking it slow and allowing for cooling between every 1, 2, or 3 heats. Once this is all complete, you should have a nice closed or near closed loop that you can install a new hook onto. The next step in the process is what I call the heat treatment process. Now I realize that what I'm going to outline here isn't the actual proper way of heat treating steel. I realize that. What I'm doing here though is I'm trying to stress relieve and anneal enough where it will be usable. If you do not heat treat, the metal will be far too brittle and most likely will break or snap. What you'll want to do is you'll want to shield the body of the lure with something. Generally I just use the pliers. You'll want to very quickly heat the loop up to red hot and immediately quench the lure in water. Usually leave it in the quench for 1 or 2 minutes. The next step is to slowly heat it more gradually to a dull to semi-bright red. Again, shielding the body of the lure with something. Hold the loop farther back from the flame than you were previously so that it heats more gradually. Once it's reached a dull to slightly bright red, remove it from the heat and simply set aside and allow it to cool at room temperature. After it's cooled, you'll need to protect the bare metal with something. You can use anything you want here. I've used paints, I've used powder paints, I've used clear nail polish, I've even used cold galvanizing compound. You'll just want to use something to protect that bare metal. I've even just sprayed it with WD-40 rust preventer, and that actually has seemed to work okay to prevent rust. Once you've protected the loop and that's dry, and you've installed all your other components, and you've painted the lure or whatever else you're going to do to the lure, it's time to install the hook. Doing this is straightforward. It's simply installing the open eye of the hook into the newly formed loop you've just made and crimping the eye of the hook closed. It's just that simple. Finally, you can install your skirt and your lure should be done, and it should look like some of these that I'm showing here. I hope this has been helpful for all you lure hunters and fishermen that tend to find lures out there like me. I know I used to discount some of these lures. I used to think they were no good and simply threw them away, or I'd melt the lead off and save the wires. As you can see, using this method, though, it helps you salvage quite a few of these lures. Not only do you have a nice custom creation, it's a really nice feeling when you catch a fish on a custom creation of your making, and on a lure that you've salvaged that most people would have discounted and simply thrown away. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.